Hello and welcome to Screen Fever. My name is Jackson Smith and I'm joined today by Adam Barnard, and today we're talking about our most anticipated movies of this coming year. 2020 was a very interesting year for movies. Obviously, with the COVID-19 pandemic, theaters were closed, so actually a lot of the movies we're most excited for were movies slated to come out in 2020, but in my opinion, I think them getting pushed back only makes me more excited. So I'm very, very excited to dive into this.
Yeah, I think 2020 was going to be an interesting year for movies just in general. I feel like you're kind of starting to enter that like post-Marvel Infinity War Endgame, just massive superhero push where that's saturated everything. And then, Star Wars ended, the new sequel trilogy ended at the end of 2019. So like Marvel and Star Wars and all these big brands kind of had to move into a different phase. So it was going to be like, okay, what's that going to look like? And then what standalone movies are going to come out, or what other movies do we like? And it was still a very, very busy year for blockbusters, or was going to be. And right as we were actually on the cusp of getting some of my most anticipated movies, things started getting pulled from theaters. So, and the rest is history.
Yeah, well, there is a vaccine out there right now as of this recording, and by the time it comes out, more people will be vaccinated. So in my mind, it's really only a matter of time until theaters are back to the size that they were at. But I think things are going to be different. Like you said, 2019 was the year we got the end of the Avengers, the end of Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's not theatrical, but the end of Game of Thrones. It was sort of like the big blowout year. And this last year, 2020, gave a lot of space.
Still getting used to it.
I know, right? Yeah, I gave a lot of space for like smaller, more mid-budget movies to really thrive and really succeed. So I'm really excited to see that trend continue, but at the same time, I'm very, very excited to see some of these other big tentpole movies back in theaters, hopefully later in the year when it's safe to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can speak on a personal level. Like, I'm going to absolutely wait until I have a vaccine and I know it has fully kicked in. The temptation is there to be like, oh, well, if some people have been vaccinated, I'm sure things are better. Personally, I'm just making the decision to wait. And I think a lot of people, especially more at-risk people or older people in their 40s, 50s, 60s are going to wait to do that too. So I'm actually, talking about this list. We are recording at the very, very beginning of January 2021. Right now, this is all subject to change. So if you're listening later in 2021, if some of these are no longer 2021 releases, we apologize. At the moment, as far as we know, all of these on our list and honorable mentions are slated to come out sometime this year.
Sure. Yeah. No, everything, I think everything is subject to change. Some of these movies too don't actually technically have release dates yet, but they are either completely done with production or in a stage of production where there's really no reason for it not to come out by the end of the year. So yeah, these are the movies that if I get to see these movies by the end of the year, it will have been a great year.
So starting at number 5 on your top 5 most anticipated movies for 2021, Jackson, what do you have in the number 5 slot?
My number 5 is Nightmare Alley, which is the new film from Guillermo del Toro. I am a huge Guillermo del Toro fan. He is one of my favorite directors, and this is going to be his first stab at film noir, which honestly I think is so well suited to his sensibilities, to his style as a director. The cast is phenomenal. Rooney Mara, Kate Blanchett, Bradley Cooper. I've learned not to bet against this guy, and everything I've heard about this movie suggests that it's going to be like really fantastic. So
for sure. And I mean, there are some filmmakers that regardless of genre are just so good at their craft. It's hard not to be excited about something they do in some form. Sometimes even people who like specialize in horror, which isn't my genre, when they make a movie, especially out of the horror genre, I might be like, oh, this is interesting. I kind of want to see what they've done with this. And I think Guillermo del Toro fits that bill of a director who's just so distinct and so in charge of his craft that, I don't know very much about this movie. I kind of had a little panic attack looking at it. I'm like, wait, I think I know this one, right? But yeah, I mean, he's done even when we were in film school, it was like they show you Guillermo del Toro movies in your first year, like
Yeah.
Pan's Labyrinth and stuff. So it's like he's such a quintessential filmmaker. I will line up for anything he makes.
This is also going to be his first movie post Shape of Water. He won.
Interesting.
Yeah, he won both the Best Picture Oscar and the Best Director Oscar for that. And usually when someone does that, they are given the opportunity and the resources to really do whatever the hell they want. So
Yeah.
not that Guillermo del Toro, he never feels like he's had to compromise as a director, but I can imagine this is a situation where Searchlight Pictures, basically gave him all the money in the world or all the money they could at least to do whatever he felt was best for this story. So yeah, no, incredibly, incredibly excited for this one.
And I feel like you and I are the kind of people who like when directors get let off the chain. Like, this came out in 2020, but Tenet, I feel like was Nolan's movie where he got the amount of money he wanted to with no supervision. And last year or 2 years ago in 2019, Michael Bay's Six Underground felt like the movie that he finally got, released to do whatever he wanted to do with the budget he wanted. So if this is Guillermo del Toro's version, I'm like, that'll be cool.
Yeah, no, I'm just a fan of directors or like just good filmmakers getting the resources to tell the stories they want to tell, because if you've got like really, really skilled, talented people behind the camera, it's going to result in something fantastic, and people like to see good things. I don't know. I mean, Shape of Water was a movie about a woman having sex with a fish man. And it won Best Picture and made like a ton of money at the box office. So yeah. No.
Well, it's like, and directors usually have to earn that though. That, like you said, it's like they have to win an Oscar or just be so reliably successful and makes enough hits in a row, basically. So it's kind of it doesn't happen all the time. It's kind of special when it does.
They have to be a true craftsman, and Guillermo del Toro is a true craftsman if there ever was one. So yeah,
absolutely
very excited for this. So what about you, Adam? What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Army of the Dead, which is a Netflix movie that's coming out with Zack Snyder sometime this year, and somehow perfectly lined up that we just had that discussion about directors, because this is kind of, I think, going to be one of like Zack Snyder's okay, I get to do whatever the hell I want movies that he gets to make in his career. Like, he even came out into the press and said, this is the first time I'm being fully let off the hook. And it's like, if you've seen any Zack Snyder movies, it never looks like he's on the hook in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like, whatever the hell this is going to be, I am very, very, very excited for. And I mean, the movie's set up at Netflix, which is kind of like, if you somehow fit into their algorithm and have a good genre movie and you're a reliable craftsman, like you said, you get a lot of money usually. And I think this is kind of, his post DC blockbuster, after doing the Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and debatably half of Justice League. So I'm just really excited to see him move on from that chapter of superhero films and kind of get back to stuff that, that hyper masculine, weird, super stylized, crazy ass filmmaking that he's kind of known for.
He started out doing zombie movies, right? He did Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead, I think, was his breakout movie.
Yeah,
so
that was his first feature. It's kind of weird. Dawn of the Dead, Army of the Dead. Like, I don't know if it's like a homecoming for him to go to the zombie genre and then like really, because Dawn of the Dead was great. Really good, but it was the least Zack Snyder movie, and the way it was shot, it was kind of like a traditional drama and thriller, and I mean, also James Gunn wrote the script, and that's a very different voice on the page, and it was still a studio movie and a studio remake, so it's like, I think when he came out with 300, that was his statement of, this is who I am as a director. This is how I want things to look and the kind of feel I want my movies to have. Yeah.
No, it's like Netflix, like you said, like Netflix loves to, they want content. They want movies. They want more stuff. And so they've been doing this thing where they will take these big, huge, successful, ambitious directors like, Michael Bay or Alfonso Cuarón, and basically say like, here, what is the movie you've always wanted to make? And I have a feeling this is going to be that for Zack Snyder, and I'm very excited to see what that is. Yeah, no, that would have been on my list too if it didn't.
Right. Yeah. List. So what we're doing is we kind of had to pick and choose. Like, some that are on Jackson's list or honorable mentions might have been on mine, but we had to kind of like split the custody of the movies we wanted to put on between the two of us.
No.
So what did you have for your number 4 pick?
So my number 4, the first on my list that was slated to come out in 2020, is Death on the Nile, which is the second Kenneth Branagh directed adaptation of a Hercule Poirot Agatha Christie mystery. The first was 2018? Was 2018 Murder on the Orient?
It was 2017.
27. Ooh, you're right. It was
fall
2017.
Of 2017. Wow. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so long
Time
ago.
flies.
But yeah, so I'm a big mystery nut. I love whodunits. I'm a particularly big fan of the Poirot books. I actually got into them around the time that Orient Express came out, and I've been trying to read as many as possible. I actually just got Death on the Nile for Christmas. I'm gonna read that next. Whodunits are kind of, I don't know, I feel like they're kind of making a comeback, like
Knives Out.
Yeah, like Murder on the Orient Express was, of course, like this classic mystery told on the biggest canvas possible with all of these amazing actors and very lavish costumes, and I think it really resonated with people, and I'm very, very.
It was a financial hit, right?
It was a
Like,
financial hit.
good.
Yeah, it got decent reviews. I think it kind of got unfairly bashed by critics, but I thought it was a really cool adaptation of that book specifically, and I just think Kenneth Branagh is, I guess usually, since Artemis Fowl did come out this year, he's usually a really, really excellent filmmaker, and usually like his stuff has a real sheen and a real polish to it. So yeah, no, I'm super jazzed for this one.
And correct me if I'm wrong here with Murder on the Orient Express, but it's like it was a pretty loyal adaptation to, was it? Or
yeah,
no?
well, I guess this is kind of a good time to talk about this. What I found cool about his Orient Express movie that I think frustrated a lot of people was how bombastic it was. Like,
Sure.
like the Poirot books, like he's like a mousy Belgian detective. Like they're not very dramatic. So of course Kenneth Branagh comes in and he gives this performance and he turns him into this like crazy wild ass character, and the emotions are flying as quick as the knives. And it's just like, I don't know. Like Murder on the Orient Express is such a oft-told story. It's been adapted so many times. The Sidney Lumet movie is honestly probably one of, if not the best mystery thriller of all time, in my opinion. It's a Sidney Lumet movie, for Christ's sake. But it was like, if you're going to do another adaptation of that book, you have to do something different.
Yeah.
You have to bring a new wrinkle to it. You have to put yourself in it. You have to make it personal. So it was like, I thought that movie did a really good job of adapting the story and streamlining the story and fitting it into a different kind of narrative while also really marching to its own beat. And I really appreciated that. I know some purists didn't, but I did. And I appreciated it enough to be extremely excited for the second one. I saw the trailer for it and was like, ooh, yeah, this is going to be real cool. So Adam, what's your number 4?
Well, talk about a hard left turn. My number 4 is a small little movie coming out this year called Monsters of California, although not sure if that's the final release title, but that's what it's been called so far. Directed by none other than Blink-182's Tom DeLonge. Most people will know him as the guy who sang All the Small Things, that song that we hear every week on the radio still after 20 years of being out in the world. But since, I guess, like about 2005, 2006, he's been in a band called Angels and Airwaves that came together after Blink split up. And while they are still a traditional band, they've done lots of short films and movies and kind of like almost concept albums. So the album will come with music videos or books or short films that kind of tie into a theme. And, Tom produced the Will Eubanks feature debut, Love, which was, produced with an album and came out as a double album and a movie. But Monsters of California is the first time that he will be stepping behind the camera to direct a feature, not produce or not, be involved with and, manage or curate, but to write or co-write and direct. And I mean, I've watched the stuff he's directed, as he grows his craft. And I think the time is right for him to do this, but like, I'm just so interested to see what this movie is going to be about. And, yeah, how it's going to resonate. Because apparently it's kind of like, it's about a bunch of San Diego skate rats. So very much that like
Personal
90s.
story,
Yeah. There's a lot of his own youthful friendships and experiences in this movie, but there's some kind of like sci-fi government conspiracy twist, which is also so quintessentially Tom DeLonge. So yeah, I mean, hopefully this is going to come out with the new Angels and Airwaves album sometime this year. And yeah, I'm very, 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 very excited for it.
Yeah, if he's as good of a filmmaker as he is a musician, then this is gonna be incredible. I mean, like I really like Blink-182. There are a couple Blink-182 songs that really resonate with me, but I love Angels and Airwaves.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like almost everything I hear from them is fantastic. And yeah, it's interesting. So, I like this band and you're so into it. So you show me like the movies and the music videos and the stuff that he's had a very, very big hand in filmmaking wise.
Absolutely.
I really dug that because I don't know if he directed it, but he did that short for the Poet Anderson
Yeah, he
short
directed
film, which was like an animated short film that came out several years ago. That was extremely impressive. Then he was a producer on Love, which was a really, really cool indie movie, which gave us Will Eubank, who's the guy who did Underwater, which was one of the dopest movies from last year. If you haven't seen it,
go watch it, people.
Please watch Underwater. It's on HBO Max. But yeah, no, this is going to be really interesting. I'm very, very excited for this.
So Jackson, what did you put for your number 3 pick?
So my number 3 pick is A Quiet Place Part 2. I'm a big horror movie fan. I really love a good solid scare, and honestly, I think I would venture to call A Quiet Place one of, if not the best horror movie of the last 10 years.
Really?
Like, I think that movie did such an amazing job of, well, for one, scaring the living shit out of you, but B, also just like creating like really excellent, believable stakes. It like the filmmaking was so classical and graceful, and it ended up having such a broad appeal. Like it was one of those horror movies. I feel like the salt of a good horror movie is it gets people who aren't horror movie fans invested in it, involved in it. And that was one of those that like the weekend it came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, you got to go see Quiet Place. You have to go see this movie. Because it's like, even though it was really scary, it was like, you got to the end and you wanted to just like stand up and scream. So yeah, I loved it. And the reactions from the second one came out. The reviews did not come out before the release date got pushed back, but the reactions came out, and pretty much all of the reactions said, this is everything you hoped it would be. This is going to be like, this is a great sequel. This totally pushes the concept forward, but also feels like such an amazing evolution of the story. And it'll also be interesting too, because like, this I think is going to be the third overall. This is going to be the third feature that John Krasinski has directed, but the second big Hollywood movie that he's directed, and he's not going to be in it. He's going to be mostly behind the camera this time around, because I mean, spoilers here, but his character does not make it to the end of the first one. So I think it's really gonna give him more chances to show off his skills as a director. And I mean, I could just watch Emily Blunt do anything forever. She's just phenomenal. So yeah, no, this one I'm super, super stoked for.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw a movie called, I think it was The Hollers. I
forgot about. Yeah, yes.
That's his
so
first
this is fourth.
movie.
Sorry.
No. I think that was his. I don't know.
He did a very small indie movie, which was an adaptation of a David Foster Wallace book.
And it wasn't The Hollers?
And it wasn't The Hollers. This was another one. So you're right that actually this is going to be his fourth movie.
Sure. I thought The Hollers was the only movie he did before A Quiet Place. But yeah, I mean, I was at a friend of the family's house, and they were just watching this movie, and it was funny because like I was watching it, and it was kind of weird because it was actually a bit like a script we wrote together tonally. So I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, is this what everybody does for their first movie when they try to write a script? And I mean, it was fine. It was like just completely acceptable as like a nostalgic indie drama. But I remember looking at that and being like, I guess he's like, one of those directors who just has to, one of those, actors or artists who just has to, try his hand and do something new. Like, good for him.
On the system,
yeah. And then like, I haven't seen A Quiet Place, but I got those reactions.
Oh no, did I just spoil it for
Oh,
you?
that's fine. I like
so
knowing
sorry.
stuff with horror so I don't get scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something where, you know, when that movie came out, everybody's like, oh my God, he might be like one of the great up and coming directors. So to make that jump from kind of just like dabbling in directing or doing something kind of so whimsical as like, you know, his first or second movie and then hitting a home run like A Quiet Place. I mean, he's definitely, and he's still pretty young, all things considered. So he's someone to watch even after he moves away from this franchise, like to see what he can tackle. He could be like the next Ben Affleck, who just like absolutely sweeps the table with his directing.
I mean, the tech, like literally, like the technical filmmaking in A Quiet Place was so solid that like that guy just so obviously knows his shit.
Yeah.
Like that guy just so obviously knows his shit and could probably do whatever the hell he wanted at this point. I think he could make any kind of movie and really make it pop. But I have not seen The Holler, so I don't know. I don't know about that. But
Sure.
but this one I am particularly very excited for. So Adam, what's your number 3?
So for number 3, I picked The Eternals, which was a Marvel movie that was supposed to come out, I think it was like November of 2020 or it was fall of 2020. And I think, you know, Kevin Feige and everybody else at Marvel have been kind of open that like this is their open about the fact that this is their next big swing. Like this is their next big Guardians of the Galaxy or, you know, side project that's not like one of the more famous comics or full of the famous characters like Iron Man or Captain America or something that has really ubiquitous cultural visibility. But it's supposed to open up the Marvel universe to include the Celestials, which are beings that have been teased in past movies, and you know, beings that have lived for thousands of years and are godlike figures. You know, we're so used to the MCU being about people we can kind of recognize or people in environments we can recognize, like Captain America in World War II, Iron Man, and you know, Tony Stark is like a bit like Elon Musk, and you know, the Avengers have their military bunker here, and it all kind of looks like it could fit in to our world, you know, minus the crazy end of the world stakes in the third act of each of those movies.
Yeah.
This, I think, is going to do kind of, you know, follow in the footsteps of Doctor Strange and a bit of what Thor's doing, which is just like blow the world building open and allow the storytelling to just go anywhere in the galaxy with any of these planets and side characters that are, you know, like kind of like a bit like what Captain Marvel did too. But you know, apart from the premise, I'm just really excited about the filmmaker they picked, which was Chloe Zhao. And it's kind of weird that I would say that because I'm just going to be honest, I have not seen any of her movies in totality. But I have read a lot about the writer and about Nomadland, which is on track to, I think, win Best Picture this year. And I've watched and read a lot of interviews with her because whenever a filmmaker basically does one or two indie movies and then gets, you know, pulled up to the big leagues immediately, I'm always interested to see like, okay, what is that spark that got everybody in Hollywood to want to lunge for this person's, you know, talents and to hire this person. And you should talk a bit about her because she's incredible. I mean, she's absolutely incredible.
I just saw Nomadland about a week ago, and I still haven't fully recovered from it yet. I mean, it is a staggering work. It is like honestly, like if that doesn't win Best Picture, I think it's going to be a crime. Like it was really just like a capital G great movie, and yet so not the vibe I would expect for someone doing a Marvel movie. Like it's like, I mean, like you've got like Taika Waititi is a good example, right? Because it's like when he got hired for Thor, people were like, oh, who is this guy? But you know, he was part of the Flight of the Conchords team. He just did Hunt for the Wilder People, which was not a Hollywood movie, but definitely like felt like one.
It felt like a big story.
Exactly.
Well, it's like, it felt like how when I watched Safety Not Guaranteed, and I saw that when it came out, it's like this small movie shot, you know, almost feels like amateurish in its scale, you know, in its production or whatever, but it has such a big heart and weaves you through this big emotional character journey that it's like when you watch that, you kind of walk out feeling like you've been on a blockbuster adventure. So it's like with Hunt for the Wilder People, when I saw he was doing Thor Ragnarok, I went and watched that and I'm like, oh my God, of course. It was just such an obvious pick.
Exactly.
You know, to your point, Chloe Zhao is like, likes all these like weird supernaturalistic low-key storytelling and lighting and filmmaking choices, and to pick her for a Marvel movie is definitely a swing.
It's a fascinating choice. Yeah, I mean, like Nomadland is it's not half documentary, but like half of the characters in that movie are not characters. They're real people. They're literally playing themselves. And yet you get to the end of that movie and you feel like you've been on an adventure. You feel like you've been to all of these places, and it has such an amazing it has such an amazing sense of place, and it really has its ear to the ground in terms of the character development and the emotional journey of the story, and those are qualities that every good movie has, whether it's a Marvel movie or a weird indie movie or a mid-budget thriller. Like, they all have to have that skill and that element to it, and she clearly has that as a director. So yeah, no, I it's Marvel. There hasn't been a bad Marvel movie, I think, since the second Thor movie, and there hasn't, in my opinion, been a subpar one since the first Ant-Man. So it's like I'm very confident this is going to be really good at worst, and at best it'll be like a Guardians of the Galaxy type situation where it's just like an instant classic. So I'm very excited for this one as well.
Absolutely. So moving on to the last two, Jackson, what did you put for your number 2?
So my number 2 is The Matrix 4. I am so interested to see what the continuation of this story is going to be. This year, I did a podcast with our friend Robert Yanez Jr. On the Matrix sequels. So I went back and I watched the Matrix sequels for the first time in years. I don't even think I had actually even seen the third one before. And that is one of the greatest trilogies of all time. I don't know. Like, this is my hot take, is that I would put I would put the Matrix trilogy on par with the original Star Wars trilogy. I think giving those two filmmakers the opportunity to tell an epic, mythic story like that on that scale resulted in something I think really enduring, and I think really, really great. And now Lily is off doing her own thing right now, but Lana has the opportunity to come back and continue the story and check in with the characters years on and see what the world looks like after the events of that trilogy. And man, I'm just dying to know what that is. And two, like, everything I hear about the production of the movie, everybody involved with it is like, yeah, there's going to be shit in here that you've never seen before. Like, this is going to be...
Well, that's exactly why the first Matrix movie was so revolutionary.
Exactly.
But, I mean, you were telling Chris and I when we were rewatching those movies how weird of a pick the Wachowskis were to direct something this big. I think they were pretty young at the time that they did the first Matrix movie, and they weren't super established filmmakers at the time.
They were kind of like what... Chloe Zhao, like, they had one indie, they had written a couple scripts and written a couple big Hollywood scripts, and then they had done this one weird like $2 million indie sex thriller, and Scott Rudin was like, yeah, you want like $60 million to make like a live action Ghost in the Shell movie? Like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And yeah, I think Matrix completely changed the landscape of filmmaking for the next 20 years. I would call it one of the most influential movies of all time.
Sure.
And still, to this day, holds up. It's just as fucking cool as it was all those years ago. And yeah, no, I even when the Wachowskis are not good, like, I don't like Jupiter Ascending. I think Jupiter Ascending is a bad movie. It's rough, still like so weird and interesting, and like, how did you come up with something like that? And like even at their worst, they're still some of the most invaluable filmmakers in Hollywood. And this will also be the first time Lana is off as her own on her own as a director, so that'll be very interesting to see. I mean, I'm always down to see Keanu Reeves in something. Like, this is gonna be great. I'm very, very excited for this. So Adam, what's your number 2?
So my number 2 is Top Gun Maverick. For many, many, many reasons. So I will try to condense this as much as possible. But like, I grew up a total aviation nut, first and foremost. Like, I wanted to be a pilot for a very long time. And, the dogfighting in Star Wars or Stargate or the other franchises I watched were always my favorite part, to see the space combat, to get that kind of like fighter pilot experience. Because it was just always like, how cool would it be to be a fighter pilot? The things that you feel emotionally and physically and viscerally. And I grew up that way, but believe it or not, I had just never seen Top Gun. I don't know what happened. Maybe my parents figured out how homoerotic it was and didn't want to show it to me as a teenager or something. What?
So that might have been it.
Yeah, it's possible. But anyway, it was only after I took a break from college and moved back home that I watched that movie, and I'm like, it was almost a perfect movie for me. The original
Top Gun. All my life.
Yeah, where has this been? Like, I didn't realize you were allowed to make a movie this cool and weird. Like, and so that movie has stuck with me. And then there has been a long gestating sequel. Like, I think Tony Scott was slated to direct, to direct the movie for a while, and then he passed away, which really threw a wrench in the development. So they've been trying to make a Top Gun sequel for a long time, but the way this is lined up with Joseph Kosinski, who did Tron and who did Oblivion, and not the original Tron, the new Tron, Oblivion, and Only the Brave. You know, for someone who is so into this kind of spectacle and extremely precise clinical filmmaking with his first two movies, I was going into Only the Brave being like, what's this going to be like? And it had so much heart and attention to detail. I was really blown away by his versatility, Joseph Kosinski's versatility over those three movies, and he works really well with Tom Cruise, which is important to have if you are making a movie with Tom Cruise because he has such a personality and an author in his own right. But everything I have seen about this movie, from the way they've shot it to the behind-the-scenes featurettes to just hearing the people kind of talk and hype people up for what this movie is going to be like, I think it might be one of the coolest blockbusters made of the decade. It has the potential to be one of the most revolutionary films simply because they're trying to make a worthy Top Gun sequel, but they're also trying to like stretch the limits of technical filmmaking, you know, shooting this kind of stuff practically. And as a filmmaking nut, an aviation nut, a Tom Cruise nut, you know, a blockbuster fanatic, all of these things, it's like, this feels to me like pretty close to the jackpot of how cool a movie could possibly be. So my expectations are admittedly maybe a little too high, but you know.
Look, I out of all of the movies that we are talking about in this video today, I'm not watching this one at home. I'm watching this one on a big screen. I'm not, like, I remember they showed the trailer for this in front of Rise of Skywalker when I saw it last year, and it's just something like physical that happens to your body when you're watching some of that footage where you're like, wow, oh my gosh, that camera is in that plane. I am actually in the air. And yeah, I mean, every one of Joseph Kosinski's movies he's made, I've liked more and more.
Yeah,
Tron, I think Tron is kind of a subpar movie, but like so vivid and cool and well designed that I'm inclined not to even care. I thought I had problems with Oblivion, but I thought it was really cool overall. Only the Brave was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Best movie.
Wow. I was like floored that wasn't in the Oscar conversation like around the time it came out, because I just thought it was just a really, really, really beautifully done and really honest true story. And the filmmaking in there was stylish without being ever too obtrusive, and he displayed such a skill of working with actors, you know, like,
yeah. Because part of my problem was Tron was just not well acted, I felt like, and it was, I think part of that was the script, but it was like one of those things where I was really worried, like, oh, is Joseph Kosinski like that guy who's so obsessed with the technicality of everything that he can't, you know, reach those actors or see the heart in a story? And like, I think with Oblivion and then definitely with Only the Brave, he proved that to not be true.
So he is overdue for a movie like this.
Yes,
and the fact that it is this movie is like I saw Top Gun for the first time this year.
Right.
And I was gobsmacked. I was like, wow, I cannot believe something like this even exists. Like I have no idea what this movie is going to be. I don't know if I don't know if it's going to be like Top Gun or if it's just going to very much be its own thing.
Right.
Either way, yeah. I'm waiting until I have a vaccine, because I need to see this on the biggest possible screen with the biggest speakers, the biggest speakers imaginable.
So I guess we've now arrived at our number one picks. If you thought we were excited before, just wait until you hear us talk about these movies. So, Jackson, what did you pick for your number one?
I took the year 2020 to do a lot of things that I've wanted to do, but, never really had the time to. And one of those was to read a book that everybody told me that I should have read before I die, but which was really, really, really big and, required a big time commitment. But, we had nothing but time on our hands in 2020. So I read Dune. And it was the best book I have ever read in my entire life. It is my favorite book. I could talk for hours about Dune. I think it is just the coolest thing. I think it is such a fascinating exploration into ecology, politics, religion, all of these different topics, while also just being such a banger of a story. Like, it's just so much fun. And Denis Villeneuve is doing a Dune movie. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. I am so bummed that I didn't get to see this year. Honestly, this one I would have, if they released this, if they sold this to Netflix or Apple TV Plus or something, I would have been fine. I just want to see this movie. I just really want to see this movie. The cast.
One of the best casts assembled in modern memory.
Having read the book now and knowing who all those characters are, I just think like Timothée Chalamet is just such a perfect choice for Paul Atreides.
Yeah.
It's the trailers like really display like a strong knowledge of what that story is supposed to feel like and what it's supposed to look like.
Oh man.
I like the David Lynch one as kind of like
fun.
A fun kitschy thing from the 80s, but it's not that book. It just doesn't quite get to the heart of what that story is. And I am worried that they're not going to have, because it's the first half of the book. Sure. They're doing the first half of the book. I'm worried that they're not going to have the chance to do the second half. So if you're listening to this, see Dune, pay for Dune, please. Yeah, I want that. I want to be able to see. I think this has the potential to be like a Lord of the Rings type situation where the best filmmaker for the material has the opportunity to bring it to life in the way that it deserves to be brought to life. And I think it could be a Lord of the Rings type situation where it ends up just being this enduring classic that people keep going back to over and over again. So
yeah, and I mean, Dune is kind of one of the most influential sci-fi fantasy novels of all time. Mm-hmm. In the first place, just objectively speaking, how much it influenced. It's I think it actually was an influence on Star Wars and
it's gotta
George
be.
Lucas.
There's too much in Star
the
Wars.
Book,
that's
not the movie.
There's too much in Star Wars that's also in Dune for me to like. Of course, George Lucas read that. Of course, George Lucas knew what it was at least. I
think it's funny that just on a side note that David Lynch was very close to directing Return of the Jedi, and then he went and did Dune instead. And I mean, it's like
he should have done Return of the Jedi. That's my hot take.
No, I agree with that actually. But yeah, I mean, Dune basically has all the elements of iconic properties that we love. It has, like the fantasy element of Lord of the Rings, the kind of like spacefaring and family elements of Star Wars, and like the prophecy aspect, and kind of like the life force. What is a life force? How do we interact with our own spirituality? Yeah. It's kind of like a dissertation and a handbook on how to view humanity and existence in the universe. But the best vessel for those ideas is a story and not a dissertation that you write. And it's like to be able to take something that feels like a completely dynamic, well-rounded, complete dissertation on humanity, and then put that in a fictional story that, like you said, also completely slaps on its own right, just on a superficial, like, oh, let me sit down and read this or watch this. It just immediately hooks you in. That is so hard to do. And it's like storytellers spend a lifetime trying to achieve something like this, and most never do. And so, but then, to your point about this new movie, they got the perfect guy to do it. Like, Denis Villeneuve is possibly one of my favorite filmmakers working today. I also think he's made some of the best movies of the last decade. I think Sicario is a masterpiece, despite its, you might want to shove it into a niche genre of like, like border drug thriller type stuff. It is not that. It is so much more. And then Arrival, I think, is still one of my personal favorite movies of all time. And then Blade Runner 2049 is possibly one of the best sequels ever made
Oh,
to
yeah.
an iconic original property.
Oh man, like I
think it's even better than the original Blade Runner, honestly. Like,
there's definitely an argument to be made for that. I mean, like I'm such a fan of the original Blade Runner, but that like the reason I'm not worried for Dune is because of that movie specifically. Like
Yeah.
I was like, how on earth do you make a sequel to Blade Runner in the 21st century and not have it feel like a nostalgic cash grab or just like an absolute nonsense movie? It was like like that suggested such an intelligent voice behind the camera, to be able to an intelligent and creative voice to be able to do a sequel to that kind of movie that feels so cut from the same cloth while also just wildly different and so its own thing in the way that the original was. I would say that Denis Villeneuve is probably one of, if not the best filmmaker working in Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
And he's doing a Dune movie.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Yeah. No.
I would have totally put this on my list, but I feel like, you had such a personal connection and revelatory personal experience reading the book, and I was there to watch that. I remember every time I like walk out to go to the kitchen, I would like see you on the couch with Dune for like a week. And yeah, I think the stars are aligning for this movie. I would be very bummed if it doesn't get a sequel, if it's as good as I think it would be. So, this movie's coming out, I think, October of this year.
Yeah,
it's
I believe it's
slated.
October. Yeah.
I think by that point, pretty much anybody who wants a vaccine will have been able to get one. So I'm gonna get on bended knee too and say, please give this movie a chance. Do not sleep on this.
All right, Adam, what's your number one?
Okay, all right. My number one most anticipated movie, which I got very close to seeing.
So close.
In 2020, which has been moved now, I think 3 times, is No Time to Die. It's the 25th James Bond movie. I have what we would call an unhealthy obsession with this film before it has even come out. Like, it's something that I should be presenting in therapy. A little background, I'm a huge James Bond fan. I grew up on, I think, like, the TV sanitized versions of those movies. And that's only grown over time. I've only, the more and more sophisticated and knowledgeable I get as a filmmaker, the more and more I am kind of just in awe at what James Bond has been able to do with such a simple concept, a simple core character that you would think would be something that, lasted for a few movies in the 60s, but it was mostly kind of an outdated, chauvinistic, kind of really ridiculous portrayal of what MI6 thinks they are, you know, and it has just taken that, but continually evolved with the time, under overseen by some great producers, which I think know how to continuously breathe new life into this franchise while still keeping it authentic to what its core is. And it's become a generational thing. Like Albert Broccoli produced a lot of the originals, and now his daughter literally took over the company, Barbara Broccoli, and she picks all the directors, and nothing gets past her without her feeling like, no, this is James Bond. I this would have my father's stamp of approval. So fast forward, I'm sorry, taking a little while, but this is very
this is your number one, dude.
Yeah, this is, when Casino Royale came out, I think I was like 12, or I saw it when I was 12. That was one of the most influential movies of my childhood, to see like that opening 20-minute chase scene and the way a love story unfolds, but it's still James Bond, and it just, he felt like such a more human James Bond, and there were influences of like a lot of Bush era politics and terrorism and fears and international espionage. It just felt completely authentic to the moment, and it was just effortlessly directed and edited, and that movie was just like a lightning bolt for me. I was just like, oh my God, this is like, it's the kind of movie that you look at and be like, I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out how to do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, I didn't really love Quantum of Solace, but then Skyfall came out. And it took me a little while to warm up to that, but I think Skyfall is probably in like my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Personally, I don't think it's one of the best 10 movies ever made. I'm not saying that, but just on a personal level, like I've seen that movie probably about 30 times. I'm not even kidding, or at least cumulatively, if I watch scenes, stitched together, I've seen it all 30 times. So I'm a fan of this franchise, and I knew the Craig era was coming to an end, and I was kind of, for a while, Daniel Craig It didn't look like he was going to come back for a fifth movie. Like, he literally said at the press junket for Skyfall, like, oh, I'd rather grab that wine glass and slit my wrist than do, and smash it and slit my wrist than do another Bond movie. So when a star says that publicly, it's hard to take back. So I'm kind of like, there's no way. There's no way they're going to make a fifth one with him. It's just going to end in a disappointing fashion with Spectre. Then they hired Danny Boyle to come in and direct that final movie. And he's a great choice. I mean, Trainspotting is a masterpiece. Steve Jobs is also another one of my favorite movies that I think is underrated, the 2015 one with Michael Fassbender. And so I was ecstatic. I was like, this is going to be great. He's going to bring something fresh. He's the right choice. And I was following that production very closely, and then he got fired. And I was like, always happens, like, you know, like kind of like felt like episode 9 all over again.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was I looked at all the directors they were gonna hire, you know, to follow up Danny Boyle, and all of them just felt like a downgrade. And I was like, oh, it's like they're gonna get a guy who's done 2 movies, who's like a yes man. He'll make a competent movie that sends Daniel Craig on his way. It makes $1 billion, and let's hope the next thing is interesting. Instead, they hired somebody that wasn't rumored, which was Cary Fukunaga.
Yeah.
Who at the time I wasn't very aware of, but after watching his whole filmography, you know, watching dozens of hours of interviews and developing what can only be described as a mild homosexual crush on him, I seriously...
He's a snack.
Yeah, no, he's a snack, but he's one of, I think, the most versatile filmmakers working today. I mean, he's done the first season of True Detective. He did Sin Nombre, which is a heartbreaking but beautiful feature film about some people trying to escape, I think it's like Central America to get up to the U.S.
the border crossing.
Yeah. And then he did Jane Eyre, which is like a very, very, very key figure from British literature. And then, I
Maniac.
think Beast of Maniac, the Netflix miniseries, and Beasts of No Nation with Idris Elba about child soldiers. I mean, this guy can do anything. And it's so funny because like he was a snowboarder. He was a professional snowboarder who had an accident. And he's like, shit, I guess I'll just be a filmmaker. And he ended up being like one of the most interesting new voices. And this is his first blockbuster.
Yeah.
And so I followed this movie closely, and everything I have seen in the trailers, I feel like this is the Bond movie I've always wanted to see and never thought I would get.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this, you know, I thought this movie was going to go to shit, and it is now, like I said, an unhealthy obsession. I am like, I keeps getting delayed by 4 months, and I'm like, it is absolutely painful to watch this. You know, I said I feel like I have a positive magnetic force strapped to my chest while the movie's in a negative magnetic force, and I'm just chasing it. So we'll see. I hope it comes out in this April. It's probably going to get pushed to fall of 2021. But anyways, that's my dissertation on the movie, and before I cry, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Look, my dad he read all of the James Bond books and then went on to design the Austin Powers movies. And Agent Cody Banks, Stone Cold classic. No, but needless to say, spy movies have been part of my lexicon for as long as I can remember. And when I heard this guy was directing this movie, and when I saw it was going to be 2 hours and 45 minutes, I was like, oh, this is going to be like the ultimate one. Like, this is going to be the spy movie to end all spy movies. I am so mad I have been deprived of this for as long as I have. Like, I remember dude. like March, February, March of last year, I was just like, oh man, I'm so excited to see what they do with that. Cause like, I mean, I hated Spectre. I thought Spectre was really, really dropped the ball after Skyfall, which honestly, I would put in this one of my favorite movies of all time too. Like, you know, the filmmaker who they hired to pick up the baton, the look and approach to the movie from what I've seen, I'm just like, this is James Bond. Like, there is no franchise in movie history like this. And I think like part of what is so cool about James Bond is that you can have a movie as bad as Spectre and yet be this excited about the next one. Yeah, it's like, this is, you know, at the end of the day, like it's entirely generational, and you know, every generation has a James Bond that like really belongs to them, and Daniel Craig's version of this character has been so essential to our generation of moviegoers and filmmakers, you know,
Sure.
the kind of movies that it has yielded, the quality of movies that it has yielded, you know, the way in which they've been able to tackle a lot of the change in global politics that has happened over the last 2 decades. Yeah. Oh my God. This is, you know, I don't know how the movie's going to be, but
it could be bad.
When I am this
excited for something, I do have to, like, for my own mental health, make peace with the fact that what I would give a kidney for to see now might let me down more than anything has ever before. And it's like, you know, I was very, 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 very excited for The Force Awakens. I spent like a year and a half just reading every tidbit of information and every leak and piece of concept art that came out. The final movie did disappoint me, and it was like a real letdown. It's not a bad movie, but it just was really, really frustrating to see how it actually ended up for me. I'm prepared for that too, but I think Cary Fukunaga has been waiting, and has actually put off doing a blockbuster until I think he felt like it was the right opportunity. And it's like, just knowing his voice and the just incredible precision and emotional resonance of his filmmaking, you know, in every facet, with every cut, just all of his stuff just feels like a symphony that's perfectly in tune.
Yeah.
Even if I don't love the movie, like there's some movies of him I love more than others, but it's like the filmmaking and the voice behind it is just so rich and diversified and layered and manicured. And he's so chill too. He's like a very, very calm, like snowboarder dude. And so, yeah, I mean, I think he's the perfect person to bring Daniel Craig's James Bond character to a close. You know, he's a very the Craig character is different than all the other iterations. There's like a lot of humanity and brokenness and angst that gets explored a lot. And, you know, now with Leia Seydoux' character and however that ended up post Spectre, it's like the ground is ripe to make, I think, one of the coolest spy movies of all time.
It's kind of like a Chloe Zhao situation. Like the guy who did Beasts of No Nation is not the kind of guy who I would expect to make a James Bond movie. And this certainly doesn't look like the kind of James Bond movie I would expect from that guy. But like you said, an extremely skilled filmmaker, an extremely versatile filmmaker. And it's Daniel Craig. I love Daniel Craig. Oh my gosh, he's fantastic. So there are some movies, of course, that we are very, very excited for that did not make our top 10 list. So we'll just go back and forth and say our honorable mentions. I'll start.
Sure.
I'll just rattle these off pretty quickly. 9 Perfect Strangers, which is actually not a movie; it's a miniseries. But
we'll count it.
We'll count it. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I've miniseries are basically movies. I think like they've managed to do a lot of the same things that movies do and operate on the same scale. This is the 3rd collaboration now between Nicole Kidman and David Kelly after The Undoing and Big Little Lies. We are calling it the White Woman Cinematic Universe.
The WWCU. It's a headcanon. Yeah.
I Big Little Lies, I would venture to call just one of the best TV shows of all time. And I absolutely loved The Undoing. You know, and 9 Perfect Strangers is from Lane Moriarty, who wrote Big Little Lies. It also stars Melissa McCarthy. I think this is going to be fantastic. I'm super, super jazzed to see this one.
David Kelly and Jean-Marc Vallée have kind of, I think, in recent times established like a certain vibe of a mini series or a TV show with Big Little Lies or Sharp Objects or The Undoing, which is David E. Kelly. So yeah, anything that comes from that sphere of storytelling, I'm in.
For sure. The Green Knight, which is another one of those I'm extremely pissed I didn't get this year. David Lowery doing Arthurian mythology with Dev Patel. That trailer was like mind-blowing. 3,000 Years of Longing, which is going to be the next George Miller movie after Mad Max Fury Road. Very, very, very excited to see what that is. Very excited for the Coen brothers version of Macbeth with Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington, I think. Is that who's the other guy in that? Anyway, that's going to be interesting as all hell. The Northman, which is Robert Eager's new movie, the guy who did The Witch and The Lighthouse. It's like a Viking revenge epic. Like that's gonna be so cool. Don't Worry Darling, which is Olivia Wilde's new movie. Chaos Walking. This is an interesting one because I'm not so much excited for this movie as I am just like very curious to see what it is.
Yeah.
This is another one of those
Same here.
been delayed, reshot like 18 times like movies. But I just got done reading the book because my sister recommended it to me, and the book was really cool. So I'm like, I don't know. This could be at the very least, if it's a failure, it'll be an interesting failure.
It'll be a spectacular
It'll be a spectacular failure. Or at best, it's another Doug Liman movie, which is something everybody thought was not going to work and does work.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Yes.
Yes. Venom was obviously not the best movie of all time, but like way funnier and cooler than I think it had any right to be. And Andy Serkis is doing this one.
That's another example of like, okay, we got Venom. The movie is clearly an act of studio desperation we are going to make this goddamn movie, which has been in development for 12 years.
Yeah.
And we know what movie we want to make. So let's just like force whatever filmmakers or second unit directors we need to get this movie done. Somehow Tom Hardy's vision for the character just completely shined through as a sweaty, schlubby asshole who becomes Venom. And it's like, it's something that is so tonally confused that it just whizzes by being bad and starts to become paradoxically inspired.
Captivating.
Yeah. It's impossible to look away from. So, but then again, it's like, okay, was that a happy accident? Who are you going to hire? You're just going to bring Ruben Fleischer back? Or you're going to bring a TV director back? It's like, no, they hired Andy Serkis. And I've seen Mowgli. I actually really like his version of Mowgli, and he is one of the most prolific motion capture artists and just performers. Period.
Yeah.
So. God, I can't wait for this
movie. Again, I don't care if this is good or bad. I am going to be first in line to see this thing. Last Night in Soho, which is Edgar Wright's new movie. Been very, very curious to see what that is. And finally, the Bob's Burgers movie, which I have been waiting for years and is finally coming out this year. Thank you, Disney. Thank you, our corporate overlords, for letting this happen. But no, Bob's Burgers is one of my favorite TV shows ever. And I'm just, very, very excited to see an hour and a half of that, so
that's a stellar list.
That
is, I pretty much gonna line up for all of these too. I can't believe how many movies we have coming out this year. It's ridiculous.
So what about you? What are your honorable mentions?
So I'll do the same as you. I have quite a few of them. I'll just kind of go through them as fast as I can, in no particular order. Justice League Snyder Cut, or Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's like, look, guys, I'm not one of those people on Twitter who cyberbully people who don't like Zack Snyder, which are, kind of part of the key coalition of getting the Snyder Cut movement off the ground and then making it happen. But there is a certain toxic element of that fan base that is so loyal to Zack Snyder and so angry about this that it has made film Twitter a little bit miserable. So I don't really endorse that. However, Justice League was absolutely ripped away from Zack Snyder, and the movie they made, between the studio wanting to make a different movie than him and between his daughter's suicide and having to step away and then the hiring Joss Whedon to reshoot pretty much the whole movie at the 11th hour, it was such a clusterfuck. And the final movie is, like we've said, a war crime. And so, for a filmmaker to get the chance to come back and do some additional photography and get like $70 million to do post and all of his crazy vision properly, it's unprecedented. And it's like, for me, I cannot help but not, I have to be excited about this just to see what something like this looks like, because there's no roadmap.
Oh yeah. No, I love director's cuts. I think giving a director an opportunity to, after the fact, say, no, this is what my version of the movie should have been, is always a valuable thing. Even in the worst scenarios, it always yields really interesting results.
Totally.
But this is the biggest director's cut, I think, of all time. Like,
they're like remaking the movie.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was thinking about it too. Like, after Wonder Woman came out this year, I was like,
1984.
Yeah, well, when Justice League came out, when the movie that was called Justice League that came out in theaters several years ago came out, nobody really cared, because it's like, okay, well, we had seen one movie we liked with Wonder Woman, and then 2 movies with Superman that we were kind of split on, and one of those happened to have Batman in it. And then you were like doing a big crossover movie with all of those characters, but it was like, oh, did we really
Yeah.
care. Now you've got 2 Wonder Woman movies.
Aquaman
movie.
Yeah.
Which I just watched again last night.
So
and really,
good.
really a blast. Like, honestly, I think a really, really, really solid movie. You know, like, this is going to be like the Avengers coming out. This is going to be like the Avengers coming out, but it's like a director's cut.
I think it's going to be bigger than people think. Like,
it's going to be huge.
Like,
it's
everybody's
like,
I think at this point, everybody's so tired of hearing about that. They're like, oh, I just can't wait for the Snyder Cut to drop on HBO Max so we can get over this. And it's like, I don't think there's going to be any quiet dropping or quiet uploading onto the platform. It's going to be in the conversation for several weeks.
Yeah. It's going to bring in a lot of subscribers to HBO Max. Too,
yes.
probably.
No,
it's gonna
that
be,
too.
It's gonna
absolutely.
It's going to be a hit.
So, I mean, that would probably have been my 6th, but just to go through the other honorable mentions to speed things up a bit. Those Who Wish Me Dead. It's Taylor Sheridan's new movie that he's directing. I mean, he's written a lot of great action thrillers, but this is only the 2nd movie he's directed. I loved Wind River, so I'm very excited to see what he does behind the camera again. Also, go watch Yellowstone if you can, the TV show. Without Remorse, it's a Tom Clancy thriller that Paramount did, but it got bought out by Amazon, and it's starring Michael B. Jordan, so that should come to streaming sometime soon. Taylor Sheridan also wrote on that. You know, I'm a sucker for Tom Clancy thrillers, conspiracies, whatever. Just put it all in my body. Uncharted, another example.
Long awaited. Yeah.
I'm part of me fears it can be kind of like a Venom situation because this is a movie that was up against a wall schedule wise and just had to be pushed through. I also think that it might just be fun. Like, I think, like, even if it's short or stupid or whatever, it's, you know, Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg playing Indiana Jones probably. Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to enjoy that on some level. I just want to see it.
Yeah.
The Tomorrow War, which is formerly called Ghost Draft. It's a Chris Pratt movie, Chris Pratt action thriller that I think one of the better references would be Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat, or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be a big budget, big action thriller based off an original script, and you know those don't get made much anymore. So to have a movie that's like $150 million, it's going to be a bit like Edge of Tomorrow. It's like, you know, sign me up. Just wrapping things up, The Last Duel. It's a Ridley Scott movie. It's going to come out with Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer. I'll watch anything Ridley Scott does. Cherry, which is the Russo brothers' first movie directing since Avengers Endgame, I guess, with starring Tom Holland. Probably going to be an awards contender. And then Godzilla vs. Kong. Sign me up for anything in that universe. Yes. The Suicide Squad, you know, the happy accident that happened after Disney unceremoniously fired James Gunn and hired him back anyway, but now he got to do this movie and got a blank check by Warner Brothers to do something cool, so I'm excited about that. And then the last 2 I have are Babylon and Infinite. Babylon is Damien Chazelle's new movie, which should come out with Brad Pitt. Is it Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt or Emma Stone and Brad Pitt? They changed.
Who it is? Yeah,
they changed up the cast or whatever. But that's, you know, after La La Land is also one of my favorite movies. So anything Damien Chazelle does, I'm in for. And then Infinite, which has actually been funny enough described as something like The Matrix, that Anton Fuqua is directing and Mark Wahlberg is starring in. And I know nothing about it, but it's apparently gonna be a lot weirder than we think. So you know, again, when there are weird original blockbusters that come out, I always want to give it a chance. That's why I have stuff like Tomorrow War on here or Infinite. It's like some of these movies could be spectacular bombs, or just could be good and nobody sees them and the studio gets discouraged from ever doing them again. But I'll always go and support these like weird ass movies in the hope that we get more, because if these movies don't do well, when are we going to get the next Pacific Rim?
Exactly. 100%, you know.
And that's it.
Yeah. I'm so excited for Godzilla vs. Kong. If you didn't have that on your honorable mentions, that might have made my top 10 list or top 5 list. But.
I think King of the Monsters is like one of, it's a movie that you and I both struggle to wrap our heads around the fact that it exists, because like that, a movie like that weird and that off the chain was made in the studio system. And you know, it doesn't really bother to weave you through the story like conventional blockbuster says. It's just a matter of like, look, there are going to be monsters the size of mountains, and we are going to have the most fun possible with this. And that's all the movie is. And it's like, it didn't do very well, I think, because it didn't have like a super grounded or very clear take. It was just all over the place. It was like a Roland Emmerich movie, but it was like a Roland Emmerich movie with so much more precision.
It was like a great Roland Emmerich movie, honestly. Yeah, I mean, it's cool because like the first Godzilla was the first Godzilla was great because it wasn't like a Godzilla movie. It was like actually like putting Godzilla in as much of a real world context as you could and asking what would happen.
The Gareth Edwards,
which was cool. Yeah. And then the second Godzilla was like not that, but like felt like one of the classic Godzilla crossover movies, but like with $200 million. And oh wow,
it's how you felt
last. Oh my god,
I think it's like how you felt watching a Godzilla movie when you were a kid.
Exactly.
It recaptured that feeling. And, you know, my cynical ass, when I watch things, it's hard to reactivate that part of me. And when I occasionally find a movie, like I think Tenet was weirdly enough another example where it's like, it feels like how I remember movies from my childhood.
Yes.
But it is its own thing that I can watch as an adult objectively. And it still activates that feeling. And it's like, that is so special to be able to do.
This was a lot of fun. This was really cool. Yeah.
One of my biggest regrets was not doing one for 2020 because we did one for 2019 and then I guess at the end of 2019 things just rushed by.
You know, it's probably a good thing we didn't because it would have just been the same list as this. It would have been like
decidedly very similar.
All
to
of
this
the
list.
It would be depressing to go back and listen to that one because probably none of those movies would come out.
That's like the discussion you'd listen to and just like start pouring whiskey like just at the intro music.
Well, this doesn't age well. But, I think most of these, honestly, are going to come out this year. Like I said, I'm very optimistic about the landscape. Wonder Woman 1984 has already made $100 million at the box office globally. That's nothing to bark at. I mean, like that's a good, given how many theaters are open right now. Those are really encouraging numbers. Tenet made $350 million. That was a bomb because the movie cost $200 million, but releasing in the middle of a pandemic, that's great. You know,
I didn't think it was going to make that much money. When it came out, I thought it was going to make significantly less.
Man, no, the market is still there. People still want movies. People still want big movies.
Yeah.
And I want these big movies.
Yes. Now.
Yes. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out the rest of our videos on our channel. If you've noticed, we've just actually rebranded our channel.
Yep.
We used to be called Screen Fever, but now we're called Nightfall Entertainment because we're going to be doing a lot more short film content, a lot of other different stuff. Narrative you know, we're kind of we're a production company now, so we wanted a name that sort of like encompasses the breadth of content that we're going to be making over the next year or so. So
exactly,
speaking of, I just posted my newest short film, Stranger, to the channel. I would strongly recommend checking that out. We shot that entirely in our house over quarantine. It was a lot of fun. Stay posted for more videos in the coming months. Until next time, I'm Jackson.
And I'm Adam.
And we'll see you around.